All right, welcome. Here's another edition of 10 Minutes With. As you can see, Kate is not with us today. There was a bit of a scheduling conflict, and she told me that I'm not allowed to say that she's out day drinking again. Oh. Which the last time it was true. She was out day drinking. Today she is not. So Kate will be back next time, hopefully. So with us here today, we have all the way from Boise State University in Boise, Idaho. Please welcome two of the co-hosts of the GameChat Podcast, Jack and Eli. Thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course.
So as you can see, I dug my Boise State jersey out. I have no affiliation with the school. I just thought the jersey was awesome, and I bought this after watching the greatest college football bowl game ever played. I'm sure
I love it.
Exactly what I'm talking about, and it is the Ian Johnson jersey. So shout out to him. Let's go right in. We're going to deviate right away. Obviously you two are both students at Boise State right now, so that was a little before your time. Do you? I'm showing my age here. Do you remember that game, the bowl game with Oklahoma?
Yeah, I remember it really well. I was probably only 7 or 8 years old back then, but yeah, I mean, I'm from like around Seattle area, so wasn't like a huge Boise fan or anything growing up. But I remember watching that game and rooting for them heavily just because they were the Cinderella story, and I believe that was the game or Ian Johnson proposed to his girlfriend afterwards.
He threw the football into the stands.
Yeah. And so I remember watching that on SportsCenter. Like,
I think they got the football back though finally, but I don't know who ended up with it. But he on the 2-point conversion, he ran it into the end zone, he chucked it in the stands, and then he proposed to his girlfriend. Quite a night for him.
Doesn't get much better than that, does it?
No, it certainly doesn't. So Eli, what about you? Do you remember it?
No, if you were 7 or 8, I was 6 or 7, and I didn't start watching football until just a couple years ago anyway. So yeah, I don't really remember it.
So that game was 2007. So I would have been 22 at the time. So I was finishing up. Yes, I'm in my mid-30s. Thank you. Kate tells people I'm 40. That is not true, but yeah, it was pretty awesome. And I mean, for those who don't know, I mean, Chris Petersen obviously, took the program to the next level, but I mean, you had before it Dan Hawkins, and before that you had Dirk Koetter, who have both kind of bounced around with not as much success, but I mean, they really laid the foundation for the program, and Chris Petersen just took it that next level.
Well, for sure, and that's how Boise's kind of on the map. Like even just as a school, not even as a football program, but just as a school, I think that put Boise like on the map. For
sure. I mean, it's that and the blue field, which is absolutely amazing. I remember the first time I saw it on TV, and again, showing my age, this is like HD TV was a new thing. So a lot of us were still on our square 4x3 standard definition TVs, and we thought the color was broken. But, it's, and I mentioned to you this previously, but I went to Boise about 10 years ago. Ended up with a really nasty case of food poisoning by Jack in the Box near campus, which was a mistake. But before that happened, I got off the plane, I drove right up to campus, and I went and I had to see the blue field. I mean,
awesome.
But it was awesome. So I'm not even starting a timer today because I knew we were going to go over.
No worries.
Now that we're a few minutes in, let's go right to question 1. How'd you guys meet, and why did you start a podcast together?
Go ahead.
Well, so we're cousins, so we've kind of always known each other. We never really met, I guess. I don't know. We've been really close growing up. Out of all my cousins, I think our families each other the most. And then he's a year above me, and so he was at Boise State, and I was still kind of figuring out where I wanted to go to college, and I was choosing between Boise State and Montana State, and there was a couple other factors. Money was a really big one. But yeah, it was almost kind of a last minute decision. I remember I I remember Jack was kind of thinking, he knew I had Boise kind of on the radar. And then one day I was like, yeah, I might be coming to Boise with you next year. And we got to Boise. It didn't take very long, but you'd always kind of been this way. I think you'd always wanted to do something, like sports casting related, and podcasts are so easy to start nowadays. And so we started out in
the library, the audio room in Albertson's library.
It was almost like a closet. It was this little tiny room. We'd rent a mic from like the front desk, and we're in this little table, and yeah, I mean.
Yeah, and it just started us two, and we called it the Cousins Cast.
That's right.
Yeah, for like the first episode, because our other two co-hosts who are our roommates, one of them has been my roommate all 3 years now, and the other one was just for 2. And originally we asked one of our co-hosts, Brandon, if he wanted to help us out and, help us co-host. And at first he was like, I don't know if I have the time, I'm pretty busy with school. And then the second episode, we convinced him to come, and he was like, that was really fun. That was super easy. That only took, hour and a half. I'll do it with you guys. So we couldn't call it the Cousins Cast anymore because Brandon's not our cousin. So we had to change to the Game Chat.
Cousin plus one.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize that this was a family affair. I think this is the first time where, with the exception of husband-wife duos, I think this is the first time where it's been an extended family co-hosting. So that's very cool. So, what should a listener expect to hear listening to your show?
It's pretty funny. So we started doing this podcast in February of this year, and we're big football guys. That's the sport that we feel is easiest to talk about. Most people watch it, stuff like that. So we started it after football season, kind of on purpose to kind of recap the season and get maybe more people listening that aren't necessarily football fans, so that when football season started, they would kind of, already be listening. And that was before coronavirus happened.
Yeah.
So that threw a wrench in our plans because all of us went home, back to each of our hometowns. And so we had on, my brothers were on the podcast a few times. We had to do a lot of Zoom, and we did a lot of like drafts of random stuff. We did a whole like Disney movie bracket, like what's the best Disney movie, to kind of involve like our friends and family that maybe aren't sports fans. But now we talk a lot about the NFL mostly. We give usually before the week, we give a preview, picks, and then we recap the games at the end of the week. So that's usually what we do now. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to think that we have a couple different perspectives compared to the other guys. I'm pretty new to football, I guess. Like I think I mentioned earlier, I'd only really been watching it in the last couple seasons. I'd seen football games in the past. I live in America, so I've seen pretty much every Super Bowl. But it's some of my like perspectives are like really like fresh. Maybe not. That's not always a good or bad thing necessarily, but no, I sometimes learn things just while we're in the middle of recording a podcast, and so these guys definitely know a lot more than I do, but yeah, I still feel like I can sometimes bring something to the table.
It's funny you mentioned that about being an American, seeing the Super Bowl, and it's like I don't know which way to go on that. You see now the numbers keep trickling up every year, and it's somewhere out last year or something, around 110 million people or something watch that, which, it's an insane number that 1/3 of the country is watching the same thing on TV, watching the same channel. But at the same time, it's like, it's Sunday night. There's nothing else going on. People do have to work and travel and truck drivers are on the road and retail stores and everything. It's like you're telling me that only a third of people are watching the Super Bowl. I mean, I don't know whether I believe that or not. I mean, it's an interesting thing.
I mean, yeah, for like last year for the Super Bowl, we had probably 15 people at our place. So I don't know like how those numbers work. Like
for bars, how do you take
definitely
that into account? It's like, or in some towns they put up a giant projector screen where it's warm enough in February, and you got a bunch of people gathered on the grass watching. It's like I know they take into account, but I've never honestly looked into it. But that would be something very interesting to figure out someday, how they calculate these.
No, I totally agree, because I've wondered that myself, like for a while, how they come up with that. Because 100 million seems like a big number, but a third of the country seems a little low. It seems like everyone is at least tunes in. Yeah.
It's not Saturday prime time. It's not a weeknight. It's Sunday night. But I don't know. Maybe that is right. All right. So you guys have been podcasting for a few months. Obviously, you've run into the issue of podcasting through a pandemic. We've seen people that have actually, this has been a great time to start a podcast because I've got nothing else to do. But if you coming in just before, you don't really have the pre-experience of what that's like just because you came in. But you share, like, what have you learned? What have you run into in these last several months doing a podcast?
Good.
You want me to go? I think one of the things that I've learned is to just talk about whatever you want to talk about, like whatever you're passionate about, and don't necessarily care like what people like. I definitely listen to your audience, listen to their feedback, but you shouldn't care too much about like what the audience is going to want to hear, or what you think is going to, like, if you want to talk about it and you think it's something worth mentioning on your podcast, do it, and talk. I just think it's important to talk about something that you want to talk about something that you're passionate about, because that'll come through for the people that are listening. I think personally, it sounds better when someone is passionate or knowledgeable about a certain topic.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I listen to a lot of other podcasts, and sometimes you can kind of tell, like, when bigger, like sometimes like even celebrities or like bigger names will have podcasts, but they do it maybe because they are told to by a manager or something like that. I don't know. You can kind of tell when people have podcasts and they're like
dictated by the sponsor.
Yeah, like they're not doing it because they want to. They're doing it for other reasons, and those ones are just, you can just tell that their heart's not necessarily in it, and they just they just don't necessarily come out as good.
Kind of like those debate shows on TV.
Exactly.
You can tell
exactly.
They just don't really care what they're arguing about. They're just arguing for the ratings and for the sponsors.
Well, yeah, for sure. Like, we have the other two hosts of our show, me and Matthew, our other co-hosts, are big Seahawks fans, and then Brandon is a big 49ers fan. And so just naturally we have a pretty big rivalry, but we don't, like, I think we also respect each other's teams more than and maybe a national show would, like trying to, have each other argue and hate each other's teams for a while. But Brandon said on the show multiple times how much he respects Russell Wilson. And, we were like, when Bosa went down with that injury, we were like, man, that really sucks, because you want to see both teams play at their highest level. And I was listening to some talk radio in Seattle, and they were like, yeah, Nick Bosa's out for the season, let's go. And I was like, well, that's dumb. Like, you're just doing that because you want to pander to the hometown. So I don't know.
I mean, and even like, obviously the 49ers had a lull in between. But I mean, even just a few years back when Seattle had been to the Super Bowl a couple times, you had a really good matchup there with San Francisco and Seattle. And you have the Richard Sherman and Michael Crabtree, and then Richard Sherman like freaking out in front of Aaron Andrews after the game. I mean, those were some legendary matchups.
Oh, for sure.
And then San Francisco falls off. Now they're back up again. That seemed like that came back much quicker than anyone anticipated. I mean, it seemed like they were terrible, and then they were really good, and it was just like a light switch flipped somewhere.
Yeah, well, I think it has a lot to do with just they hired the right coach. Because I think Shanahan's a genius. It frustrates me watching them because I hate them, but it's like, man, how can you not see what this guy's doing and be impressed? And also they just drafted right. I mean, sucks that Bosa is out this year, but I mean, he's a stud. So, and I mean, Kittle, where did he come from? Iowa?
Well, yeah.
What?
I knew it was from Big Ten country.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Well, and Raheem Mostert is another one. It's like I knew Raheem Mostert because he also went to Purdue. He's younger than I am, but it's like nobody outside of Purdue and a handful of other Big Ten schools those Purdue teams were bad when he was, and he would run. He'd run over having no help at all, and talent scouts realize it. Like this guy is a great player for a really bad team, and now they're paying dividends for that. I mean, it's amazing. Definitely. So I had to give a shout out to my, to Raheem. Awesome.
Hey,
dude.
For sure, do it.
So let's move on. Where can we find your show, and where's your social media, or how do we find it?
Well, our social media right now we're just on Instagram. It's GameChat.podcast, and our podcasts are posted pretty much
anywhere you
everywhere.
can find them. Yeah. So iTunes, Spotify, Google, wherever you find podcasts. So yeah, Game Chat Podcast.
Telling you, get yourselves on Twitter.
I think that's probably smart. We've been trying. It's tough because we're pretty active on Instagram, and other times it's
The nice thing about Twitter, and this is for everyone else watching this too, is that you're posting images with Instagram. That's great. Videos, previews. That's the perfect platform for it. But you get this random thought in your head you just want to share with everybody, and you don't have a photo or a video attached to it. It's not going to go anywhere on Instagram. That's what Twitter's for.
True.
And Twitter is a great platform too for spreading your podcast audience. So I highly recommend I would jump on there and join in the chaos.
Yeah, seriously. All right, we'll do that. We'll do that.
If you ever want to get the pulse of what the world is thinking at any given time, check Twitter.
Oh, I'm on Twitter all the time personally, and yeah, but that I can see how just like retweets and stuff in general and can gain traction for your show for sure.
All right, awesome. The show is the Game Chat Podcast. Jack, Eli, thanks again for being on the show with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. We really appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
You'll see their work on StadiumScene.tv and subscribe to them wherever you download your favorite podcasts. So everyone else, check us out at StadiumScene.tv. Join the network. Give us a follow at Stadium Scene on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, and at Stadium_Scene on Instagram. And we will see you next time.
Awesome. Bleed blue, baby. Go Broncos.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.